Well, hello again, YouTube. It's Petey Two Finger here. I've got the air conditioning running. I apologize for that. Today, I wanted to talk about a great album being Faith No More, Angel Dust. It's Faith No More's fourth album, the second album featuring the band's lifetime vocalist, Michael Allen Patton. Now, there was two previous albums featuring the band's original singer by the name of Chuck Mosley. R.I.P. Chuck Mosley. Kind of a sad story. Guy suffered from addiction, substance abuse issues. But he was a fantastic frontman, and those two albums do exist, although their debut album, it seems a bit rushed. It seems like maybe they had some success with this single being We Care a Lot. Their second album, it's on Slash Reprise Records, is a record called Introduce Yourself. Now, this is it's a great album. It's a different feel simply because of the way that Mosley performs. My wife's going to be coming in here. A lot different style than what we see later with Mike Patton. And Chuck Mosley's vocal style is something, it's unique on its own. It's really, you never heard anybody who sings quite like Chuck. Oh, my wife's got Baja Blast Mountain Dew.
Two more in the car.
3 12-packs of Baja Blast.
That was 3 years.
So yeah, we don't drink a lot of that. We went to Taco Bell and tried it. It was like well thought out and planned in advance. Well, we both really liked it. So, do we still have some of that stuff?
Yes, from last year. Yeah.
We bought 3 12 packs last year, and we still have some of it. So, like I said, we don't.
About 6 cans of the Baja left.
Yeah, we still have 6 cans. So I'm not kidding when I know I look like I drink a lot of Mountain Dew, but I don't. So that second Faith No More album, Introduce Yourself, is a great album. It really is. Faith No More's debut album is a great album, and they're completely different. Like some bands tend to be instantly identifiable, and it's the same feel, it's the same song styles being rewritten. Well, Faith No More was very brave, and they completely reinvented themselves for this sophomore recording featuring Mike Patton. It is the band's fourth record, but really the way that I look at this band is you have the Mosley era, which has nothing to do with the Mike Patton Faith No More. So it's confusing, and now that we got that out of the table, I'm going to pop over to Wikipedia, which is my source. I think you're supposed to say your sources when you do this type of thing. And we'll learn a little bit about this wonderful album together. Angel Dust is the fourth studio album by American rock band Faith No More. Released June 8th, 1992. This is right before I got married. And I bogged out on the tour. It was at the Aragon Ballroom, and I was just like, I made this decision to be a good boy and not go, and I regret. I have never seen Faith No More. And like, we've had tickets and they've canceled twice. Another time we
Another time we couldn't get tickets.
had multiple
Tried.
people on multiple locations with different computers trying to get tickets, and they were all sold out and going to scalpers. Now, this band is a lot more popular in Europe than they are here. And they tour a lot more in Europe. So I've never seen Faith No More, but they were a huge part of the soundtrack of our lives. I've got all of their records, and I really do love this music. Angel Dust being that album that was the odd man out, where I didn't like it at first. It was abrasive. It was angular. It didn't sound anything like the first one. Gone was the funk, and the rap metal was gone. And what replaced it was something that's very hard to categorize. So this was the follow-up to their highly successful The Real Thing album. The band's final album to feature their guitarist Jim Martin, the guy who wore multiple pairs of glasses, the designated party animal of the band. It was also the first album where vocalist Mike Patton had a substantial influence on the band's music, having been hired after the other band members had written and recorded everything for The Real Thing except for most of the lyrics. The band stated they wanted to move away from the funk metal style of their prior releases towards more of a theatrical sound. Angel Dust is the band's best-selling album to date. It sold more than 2.5 million copies worldwide. It also debuted at number 10 on the Billboard 200, making it the band's only top 10 album in the United States. So, the way the story goes, Jim Martin, the guitar player, ends up with a copy of a cassette demo recording of this band, Mr. Bungle, featuring Mike Patton on vocals. And he recommends to the other members of the band that this is the guy we need to hire, because while they were on tour in Europe, I believe, Chuck Mosley, their vocalist, was really boozing it up. And he would get violent. He was not a happy drunk. Some people, they get mean, they get resentful when they get lit up on alcohol. And he physically attacked one of the band's roadies, who was a real close personal friend to the band members. So he ended up losing his job. They fired the front man of Faith No More. And I know he had he did some comeback. It was like Vandals Against Illiteracy, and it was all spelled wrong. Chuck Mosley. And he had holding up a sign, "We'll rap over hard rock for food." Chuck Mosley had a great sense of humor and a great spirit. See what I did there? So they hire Michael Allen Patton, who's basically a kid. He's just out of high school, and he had this band in San Francisco with his high school friends, and he didn't quit that band. Faith No More guys were a little bit like, what are you doing? And Faith No More burst out on MTV, and Patton became a poster boy, a cutie boy. So all the girls wanted him, and these people would go to these Mr. Bungle shows because it came out that, hey, this Patton is in another band, and they expected to see the same type of thing. Mr. Bungle is a bizarre band. So they would do things like play an hour and a half of white noise at full concert decibels just to punish these people. Mr. Bungle has some great concert stories about the early days and stuff that they did. There's a story that involves a turkey baster, and then Mike Patton using this on himself and then ejecting that liquid. And you don't want to know where it was. Onto the crowd. So the real story here is they became this huge thing because of MTV, and they toured like crazy, and it really was hard on them. And their sophomore album, they completely made a left turn and did not do what anyone expected. And what it was that they did, it was Mike Patton's Mr. Bungle influence, his like world music, and he worked at a record store and he was in charge of ordering, so he would only order the most bizarre stuff. And I don't just mean death metal. I mean, like Tibetan throat singing, world music, just stuff, whatever. And when this stuff would come in, he would open all the records, tape them onto cassettes. And I believe he's doing all of this on the clock. And then reseal the albums and sell them. Or try to sell them, as he distributed all this bizarre world music to the guys in Mr. Bungle. So what we see with Faith No More's Angel Dust is the patentification, or the Mr. Bungle stamp being applied to this other band of more mature musicians. Because Mr. Bungle, they were really talented musicians in that band. They really were. And it's a unique concept, because the record company, Warner Brothers, they signed Mr. Bungle because Patton was so hot at that time. This Mr. Bungle band, they're the most bizarre band to be on a major label. There's three records, and there's all three of those records are going to be on this show. Okay, but we cannot talk about Angel Dust without explaining all of that and being like, Faith No More, it was the Mosley era, then Patton came in, and that was really the apex of that era. On The Real Thing, their first Mike Patton album, because they hired him, they put him up with the drummer because he was the youngest and most sociable. And in 2 weeks, he wrote all the lyrics and did all of the vocal takes. And he used a real nasal voice, out of character. He sang in this real specific timbrality, which was not natural. It sounded forced. And that's what's on the first album. And like, according to what I have read, Matt Wallace, their studio producer, would urge him to sing in a natural, use his real voice. And he was able to do it. He would do it in between takes, but as soon as a red light on, glee, 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 he would start doing with this false metal voice. So Patton had a lot of attitude, and what we see on the second album, Angel Dust, it's not the fourth album. We see Patton settling into Faith No More. Jim Martin, the guy who got him the job, they fired him via fax right after his father had passed away. So he was bitter. He called Angel Dust gay disco. And he was even mad about the the name of the recording. He was not down with calling it Angel Dust, which I got to tell you, the record cover is absolutely perfect for this music. And the name, using the name Angel Dust. So, following the success of their previous album, The Real Thing, and that touring, they took a break for a year and a half before beginning to work on the follow-up Angel Dust. During this time, Patton rejoined his high school band, Mr. Bungle, to record their eponymous album, which is incredible and will be featured on this great albums. All three of those Bungle albums are going to be on this show. The situation had an effect on the band, since drummer Mike Borden thought the writing process was like a state of a magic slate, where, having been completely covered in writing, there was not any more room for any more writing on that slate. So they all went and said, right, let's erase everything and start writing new stuff. And Patton was creatively revitalized. So this is what I said about when they recorded those songs for the Real Thing album, the breakthrough album when they burst onto MTV with the song Epic, From Out of Nowhere, Zombie Eaters, Underwater Love, all these great, great songs. The Real Thing. That was the end of that era. That slate was full, and they decided we're going to wipe it. So they decided to not play it safe and take a different musical direction, much to the dismay of the guitarist Jim Martin. Martin did not like the title of the album as chosen by the keyboardist Roddy Bottum, who later on came out. In an interview taken while they were in the studio, he said that Roddy Bottum wanted to name it Angel Dust. I don't know why, I just want you to know, if it's named Angel Dust, it didn't have anything to do with me. This is big, sick, ugly Jim Martin, who was friends. He was friends with the Metallica guys. He was a rudimentary part of the initial Faith No More sound. He was there from the beginning in the Chuck Mosley days. He played this black flying V guitar with a mirror pickguard, and he had the quintessential heavy metal guitar tone. He could do that guitar soloing in that style, that heavy metal style, really well. His guitar tone it's just like mercury. It is one of the greatest recorded guitar tones. And the solo on the song Epic is amazing, and the idea that he was forced out by Patton and the rest of the guys, really a lot of people felt that Faith No More never recovered from that, and it became something else. It became a vehicle for Patton's imagination and experimental music. But you could say whatever you want, and yeah, they had to get rid of Jim Martin in order to move forward, okay? If you want to have more, if you want to see them wallow in what they already accomplished, yeah, keep Jim Martin around and let's have The Real Thing Part 2. But they didn't. And this is what makes Angel Dust so brilliant. Mind you, as I mentioned, it did not click with me right away. It took a while, but that type of music that's more challenging for you to get, it tends to have staying power. Meaning you can listen to it for a few years and you won't get sick of it. And I did just that. Roddy Bottum, the guy who came out, it's like all these different types of personalities and elements in Faith No More pulling in different directions is what made it so great, what it was. And Roddy is a huge, like basically Faith No More, it's this drum sound with this keyboards on top of it and then this bass. that's like kind of funk slap distorted bass, and that's this magical thing that no other band ever had that sound or anything really close to it, and that's what made them unique. And then when you put Patton singing in the style that he's able to do, which is always different. Patton is a chameleon vocalist. He's very naturally talented. So the fact that there's a guy in the band who he's not straight, and he's writing some of the music, and some of the music are coming from that perspective. And Patton is just fine singing this stuff, which is there's some lyrics that are not straight, not hetero lyrics. So in this type of band, which is extremely hetero, and this like typically when you think about a heavy metal thing, there's no room for any people who might be different in that. And then you see that here comes Faith No More. Patton's singing these openly out of the closet, full on homosexual lyrics, and it's like, what did he just say? You know what I mean? And so then you have to think like, well, one of these guys in this band is not straight. Who is it? Is it Patton? And it's a very brave and very powerful game that they played. It's absolutely brilliant. And I can't say that I was relieved. I'm a huge fan of Mike Patton. I love that guy's work. But when I say that, I don't love him as a person. It's his music. It's his vocal ability that makes him stand out to me. So I don't have any type of real unnatural relationship with the performers that I admire. I think that it's just healthy to understand that difference, that this guy, he's singing a song, he's assuming a character. It's not him. You know what I mean? Roddy Bottom stated that they chose the name because it summed up what they did perfectly. It's a really beautiful name for a really hideous drug, and that should make people think, which is exactly what they did. Similarly, the artwork consisted of one beautiful image with a gruesome one by depicting a soft blue airbrushed great egret. It's a giant white bird on the front cover, while on the back is the image of a cow hanging on a meat hook. Bassist Billy Gould and Mike Borden, Puffy the drummer, said that the image on the rear of the album is not based on support for veganism, but rather a preview of the music, suggesting it's a combination of being really aggressive and disturbing, and then something really beautiful, soothing, really soothing. The beautiful with the sick. And these type of contrasts, having this abrasive, angular, jagged edge sounds with something really beautiful and really smooth, is what they did very well. Angel Dust has this massive like, if you have synesthesia at all, you know what I mean. It's huge. And we used to listen to this album when we would do our river trips on our boat. And the boat had a kicker box that sat right behind your head, an automotive kicker box. And we would play that Angel Dust album when the river opened up at its widest point and where the egrets flew. So you would see these birds, these beautiful white crane-looking birds, in pairs flying, and they typically would be on a tree. You'd come up and spook them with the radio, and they would fly and then land, and then you would pull up and disturb them again, and we would push them 3 or 4 times, and then they would loop back and fly over us. So it was something else to be out on a beautiful summer day with the sun just beating down and you've got this blue water. You're listening to Angel Dust, and these egrets are flying around. It was cool. It was beautiful. They used a photo of a group of Russian soldiers with the band members' faces inserted. And that was used as the cover of the Midlife Crisis single. The band had not originally planned for this, and then they didn't like that final product. That thing was the record company that they really tried to foist on us. They really wanted to mess with our layout. They sent us these horrible pictures of us, just our heads. It was like they wanted to have a poster inside the record which contained our 5 heads on a black background. Everything was black, the whole inside, and it's like, F you, we're going to make our cover. We made our record, we produced it our way, we wrote our songs, we played them our way, and it sounds like us. The single cover is similar to that of the Led Zeppelin 2, which features the faces of the members of Led Zeppelin airbrushed into a 1917 photograph of Jagdsanfall 11, a German airplane squadron of the First World War, led by Manfred von Richthofen, or the Red Baron. The writing process for Angel Dust took up most of 1991, with a large portion of the songs being written either by Billy Gould, the bassist, Roddy Bottum, the keyboardist, or Mike Borden, the drummer. And for the first time, Mike Patton. Regarding that, Patton said, "There had never been any question of me staying in the band. We started writing music for this album, and being part of something so fundamental was what made sure of it for me. The real thing had been like someone else's band. I had felt like an obligatory thing. They hadn't needed a damn singer. It was just that they had to have a singer. That's why I was there. That's why Chuck was there. We weren't really needed there." Some attributed this to its sonic difference with its predecessors. However, Mike Patton credits it to being better at playing what they hear in their heads, and went on to say that before, we used to kind of cheat around and play around with what it was. We could never translate it into the band, but we were getting better at doing that. Like, we wanted to do a real lazy, sappy kind of ballad, so we covered the theme from Midnight Cowboy. And then there's even a song that sounds like the Carpenters, in a trend that started when then vocalist Chuck Mosley lived in Los Angeles while the rest of the band lived in the Bay Area. The band would record demo tapes of the songs and exchange them between each other in Los Angeles before sending them to Jim Martin so he could work on his guitar arrangements, after which he would send them back for approval. The lyrics for Angel Dust were written for the most part by vocalist Mike Patton. He got his inspiration from the lyrics from many different places, such as the questions from the Oxford Capacity Analysis. Does emotional music have quite an effect on you? Fortune cookies and late night television. After engaging in a sleep deprivation experiment, he wrote Land of Sunshine and Caffeine. I drove around in my Honda a lot, drove to a real bad area of town, parked and just watched people. Coffee shops and white trash diner places are great for inspiration. Songs with lyricists other than Patton include Be Aggressive by Roddy Bottum, which is about fellatio, Everything's Ruined by Mike Patton and Billy Gould, Kindergarten by Mike Patton and Roddy Bottum, and Jizzlobber by Jim Martin and Mike Patton, which according to Patton is about his fear of imprisonment. They recorded this album, once again assisted by Matt Wallace, his image is featured next to the images where their faces are airbrushed in. Matt Wallace is the sixth member of Faith No More. He's the guy that engineer and produces for them. He had produced all the group's previous recordings. They entered Coast Recorders late in January 91. And in January 92, they originally set the track a total of 17 songs. However, after writing 2 more in the studio, Malpractice being one of them, which is a great great song. That song is about a woman who goes in for some surgery, and she starts to really like the feeling of someone else's hands being inside of her, and keeps going back for more surgeries. Like, how do you even think of that? It's just... Total of 19 songs were recorded. At that time, the final titles had not been chosen, so they were often referred to with these working titles, some of which continue to be used internally by the band for their live sets. Triplet is the name for Caffeine. Madonna is a name for the Midlife Crisis song. Macaroni and Cheese, or country western song, is RV. Arabic, the Arabian song, is Smaller and Smaller. F sharp, Kindergarten. I Swallow, Be Aggressive. Japanese, A Small Victory. Action Adventure, Crack Hitler. The Sample song, The World Is Yours. The Carpenters song, Everything's Ruined, which has a really interesting video. The funk song, Land of Sunshine, and the shuffle song, or the Seagull song, is an unpublished recording. That's interesting. They mention F sharp as Kindergarten. And I'm thinking, is that like a fire engine bass riff? Anytime you got an F sharp, it's like, I'm thinking that style of playing bass where you're hammering on the second fret on that low E string, and that I've heard that referred to as a fire engine. So 13 tracks were released on the standard album. The Sessions also produced a cover of the Commodore's Easy, a reworking of a previously recorded song, As the Worm Turns, and the posthumously released The World Is Yours, while the songs Das Schussenfest and the Dead Kennedys cover Let's Lynch the Landlord were both released along with Easy on an EP in late 92. At least one of these songs was not actually recorded during the Angel Dust sessions. Let's Lynch the Landlord was recorded in Bill Gould's bedroom and produced by the band. Prior to the Angel Dust sessions for Virus 100, a Dead Kennedys tribute album, it was unclear whether or not Das Schussenfest is from the Angel Dust sessions. Matt Wallace is listed as the engineer for the song, but is not given producer credit, in contrast with the co-producer credit he's given for Angel Dust. So yeah, this album, you have the band and Matt Wallace listed as the producers. There were many samples used on Angel Dust, to the point it was called gratuitous. Record label executives were concerned about the volume of samples used. They came from sources such as Simon and Garfunkel, the Amanda Galas, Ziev, and the Wizard of Oz. I'm trying to think, Wizard of Oz sample. I'm going to have to look into that. The Simon and Garfunkel samples from the first bar of a song called Cecilia, and appears throughout the drum track of Midlife Crisis. It just sounds so cool. He samples that, and he's triggering it somehow through the song. Just the sound of that coming through the PA mixed with the drum beat that they came up with it's solid gold, baby. And they did a lot of touring and promotion. They were on MTV playing live, so there's some like really great footage of them playing this stuff live. They did some late night TV show appearances, so this was like a golden moment for Faith No More after their first album, and they didn't do what the record company and the public wanted them to do. They made a left turn, and surprisingly enough, it was embraced by critics. Like, people got it, even though it presented a bit of a challenge. People loved this album. That's Cecilia, drum track, and Midlife Crisis. Then there's Malpractice with a 4-second sample, which is the second movement of Dmitri Shostakovich String Quartet No. 8, as performed by the Kronos Quartet. on their album Black Angels. Many of the samples used in the songs were recorded by Roddy Bottum on digital audio tape while just wandering about. Crack Hitler as well features samples of sirens in the background. Hey, Siren Samples. Never thought to do that. It features a sample of the intro of Iris Letry reading a flight announcement at the Rio de Janeiro Galileo International Airport. She then tried to sue the band for using her voice without permission. There are samples of Aboriginal chanting songs against sound effects from the Sound Ideas in the background of Smaller and Smaller. Also a brief succession of sounds including police car siren, warp noise, similar to what Frank Zappa abundantly used on his Joe's Garage album in a song Small Victory. During the song Midlife Crisis contains a sample of Car Thief by Beastie Boys. And I remember looking that up and hearing that. The intro to Caffeine features sounds of animals, of which monkeys and wolves can be distinguished. The B-side of The World of Yours, this features by far the most samples of any song and was referred to as the sample song by the band. The intro alone features the death sentence by Rapid Fire. The words aim and fire can be heard, and an elephant. The bridge of the song includes a recording of Bud Dwyer's Suicide that was broadcast on TV in 1987. Despite reportedly being unhappy with the band's change in direction on Angel Dust, Jim Martin, guitar player, has since stated, the live performances were always very strong. From my perspective, we came across a lot heavier than the records. Over time, the chord progressions and arrangements would morph in subtle ways that would make the set heavier than the studio version. Angel Dust was met with extensive critical acclaim. One critic wrote that the album is one of the more complex and simply confounding records ever released on a major label. He obviously never listened to Mr. Bendel. And similarly, another called it the most uncommercial follow-up to a hit record ever. The single A Small Victory is described as a song which seemed to run Madame Butterfly through Metallica and Nile Rodgers. Reveals a developing facility for combining unlikely elements into a startlingly original concoctions. The songs Malpractice and Jizzlobber have been called art damage death metal and nerve-frazzling apocalyptic rock. By contrast, the accordion-propelled Midnight Cowboy theme cover that follows. AllMusic calls the album bizarro masterpiece, citing the vocals as smarter and more accomplished than its predecessor, The Real Thing. It gave the album 4.5 out of 5 stars, calling it one of their album picks. Kerrang! Was less enthusiastic, considering Angel Dust's variety of styles a personality distorter of sorts, which undermines its potential greatness. The album was also called Album of the Year in 1992 by 7 different publications in 4 countries, making the top 10 in 3 of them, the top positions in 1. It was also named the most influential album of all time by Kerrang! Despite its initially lukewarm review. Yeah, that was probably some patent fanboy who wanted them to make Real Thing Part 2. In 2017, Rolling Stone ranked Angel Dust as the 65th on their list of the 100 greatest metal albums of all time. Oceanside's frontman Mike Vinnert named it one of the albums that changed his life. Mr. Bungle's guitar player Trey Spruance labeled it as a glorious record in 2016. And I gotta say here, my record collection, I didn't have any metal in my collection, and yet this album is one of my favorites. So don't be scared off when Kerrang! And these metal people. Faith No More was not a metal band. They weren't. There was that element that was used, and that guitar player, like, they fired him because he was too metal. And they actually hated that. The guys in Faith No More, the last thing that they wanted to be categorized was a metal album. So I got to tell you guys, this has been a lot of fun for me to learn about this stuff. If you're not familiar with this album or the other Faith No More albums, this might not be the ideal starting point for you, as it does represent a bit of a challenge. But that shouldn't hold you back. You should check this one out. It is, in fact, a great album. All right, you guys, thanks a lot. Take care of yourselves, and